Most people assume a man in 1955 stayed strong because life was simply harder back then. That's the lazy answer, and it's wrong. The truth is the opposite. A man of 70 in that era could carry his own coal, climb his own ladder, and shake your hand hard enough to make you wince. And he did it without ever once setting foot in a gym. Because being strong was not something he scheduled. It was something he lived inside of, every single hour of the day. Here is the principle this whole video is going to prove, and I want you to hold on to it from the start. It was never the exercise. It was the architecture. A 1950s man did not split his life into one virtuous hour of effort and 23 hours of sitting still. Strength was woven into the ordinary shape of his day, so thoroughly that he never once had to think about it. This was the decade before the fitness industry, as we know it, even existed. There were no commercial gyms on every corner, no supplements in the cupboard, no watches counting steps on his wrist. And yet, the men of that era held on to their muscle, their grip, and their balance decades longer than most men manage now. That knowledge did not die because it stopped working. It died because someone figured out they could take it apart and sell it back to us, one membership at a time. Stay with me, because the principle that ties all 25 of these together is the very last one on the list, and it will change how you look at your own day. Number 25. He walked almost everywhere. Most American households in 1955 owned exactly one car, and plenty owned none. So the man of the house left the car for his wife, or rode the streetcar and the bus, and walked the rest on his own 2 feet. He walked to the corner grocer, to the barber shop for his 35-cent shave, to the parish, to the rail platform with his hat on and his paper under his arm. 2, 3, sometimes 5 miles went under his shoes every day, and not one of those steps was ever called a workout. Modern physiologists finally have a name for what that did to him. They call it NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, the energy you burn through everything that is not formal exercise. Dr. James Levine at the Mayo Clinic, who coined the term back in 1999, found that lean people naturally moved enough to burn around 350 more calories a day than others of the very same size, purely through low-level, constant motion like walking. Over a year that adds up to pounds, spent without a single deliberate minute of exercise. That 1950s man had never heard the word NEAT, and he never counted a step in his life. He just walked, because walking was how a man got where he was going. Number 24, he carried everything by hand. Groceries came home in 2 big paper sacks held against the chest. No handles, no cart to the car. Coal came up from the cellar by the scuttle, swing after swing into the furnace. Water for the garden, feed for the chickens, the toolbox, the lumber, the sleeping child up the stairs to bed. All of it was gripped, lifted, and carried across the yard and up a flight, day after day after day. Strength coaches today charge good money to teach what they call the loaded carry, walking a distance while holding heavy weight in the hands. because it builds the grip, the forearms, the core, and the whole back of the body all at once. It is one of the most complete movements a human body can perform, and there is no machine that matches it. He didn't program loaded carries into a routine. The day handed them to him, and he picked them up. Number 23. His job kept him on his feet. The whole 1950s economy ran on men who stood and moved for 8, 10, 12 hours. The machinist at his lathe, the carpenter on the joists, the farmer, the lineman, the milkman on his route, the delivery man on the stairs, and even the white-collar man stood the whole way in on the commuter train and walked the last half mile to the building. Sitting still for an entire shift simply was not the shape of most work. Researchers now talk about prolonged sitting as one of the quiet engines of modern decline, bad enough that they put it in the same sentence as smoking. The body was built to move steadily through the day, and a job that demands standing and walking is a long, low-grade workout that never once clocks out. He didn't have a standing desk. He had a job that would not let him sit down. The job was the workout. Number 22. He took the stairs and climbed the ladder. Elevators were a novelty for the downtown department store, not a feature of daily life. A man climbed the stairs at home, climbed them again at the plant or the office, climbed them to the third-floor walk-up, and down to the cellar. And he was forever up a wooden ladder, painting the trim, cleaning the gutters, patching the roof, picking the apples, hauling the storm windows up twice a year. Climbing is one of the few ordinary movements that genuinely taxes the cardiovascular system and the big muscles of the legs at the same instant. Decades of population data now link something as simple as the ability to climb several flights of stairs without stopping to a markedly longer and healthier life. He never once thought of the stairs as training. They were just the way up. Number 21. He cut the grass with his own 2 arms. Before the gas mower took over the suburbs, the lawn got cut with a push-reel mower. A set of spinning blades you drove forward with your shoulders, your back, and your legs. No engine, no pull cord, no help. A typical quarter-acre lot meant 45 minutes to an hour of steady, sweating push every single week from April to September. And the man did the edges afterward with hand shears down on his knees. That is interval conditioning by another name. Driving a reel mower through thick June grass spikes the heart rate, loads the legs and the core, and builds exactly the kind of sustained muscular endurance that protects the heart for decades. Today, there are boutique classes with branded equipment and a monthly fee built to recreate precisely the effort he gave away to his front lawn for free. He did not buy the conditioning. He just refused to let the grass win. Number 20. He split and stacked his own firewood. A man who heated even partly with wood went through a cord or more across a winter, and every log of it was split by hand with an axe or an 8-pound maul, brought down a few hundred times in an afternoon. It was stacked into a tight rick by the back door, then carried in armload after armload as the cold months burned through it. That is a half day of swinging, bending, and lifting, repeated weekend after weekend. Swinging a maul is rotational power, hip drive, and grip endurance fused into one movement. The very qualities athletes now chase with medicine balls, kettlebells, and rotational cable machines. It builds a thick back and a set of shoulders that hold their strength long past the age most men go soft. They didn't have a study on rotational power. They had a cold house and a sharp axe. The gym was in the woodpile. Number 19. He kept a real vegetable garden, carrying straight over from the victory gardens of the war years. A great many families still grew a real share of their own food in the back lot. That meant a man spent his evenings and Saturday mornings turning soil with a spade, double digging the beds, pulling weeds down on his haunches for an hour at a stretch, and hauling watering cans and bushel baskets back and forth. Gardening is squatting, hinging, kneeling, and carrying. The entire menu of natural human movement, performed at a low intensity over long, unhurried stretches. That combination preserves hip and knee mobility into old age better than almost anything a man could do indoors. And it keeps the lower back working the way it was designed to. He wasn't doing mobility work. He was getting the tomatoes in before the first frost. Number 18. He cleared his own snow and leaves. When the snow came, the man of the house was out at dawn before work with a steel-bladed shovel, clearing the front walk, the steps, and the length of the drive by hand. Then often the elderly neighbors walk on top of it. Come autumn, it was the steel rake, pile after pile, bushel bag after bushel bag. Nobody owned a leaf blower, and a snow machine was something you saw in a magazine. Shoveling wet snow is heavy, full-body interval work, demanding enough that it genuinely conditions the heart and loads the entire back, shoulders, and legs. Spread across a long winter, it adds up to a season of strength training that simply went by the name of a chore. He didn't dread the snow as exercise. He just cleared it before the coffee went cold. Number 17. He fixed things with his hands. A dripping tap, a sticking door, a dead table lamp, a squeaking floorboard, a balky carburetor. The man of the house fixed it himself. That meant down on his knees under the sink, folded into the cabinet, balanced on a kitchen chair, holding awkward, braced positions, and working small, stiff parts with his hands for as long as the job took to come right. This constant, varied, real-world problem-solving keeps the small, stabilizing muscles around every joint awake, and keeps the joints themselves moving through their full range. It is the exact opposite of the single repeated motion of a machine. And a body that meets 100 different physical puzzles stays far more capable than one that never leaves the chair. He didn't call a handyman, and he certainly didn't call it a workout. Number 16. He reached for hand tools first. The handsaw before the power saw. The brace and bit before the electric drill. The screwdriver, the hand plane, the egg beater drill, the push broom, the manual whisk in the kitchen. Power tools existed and were coming on fast, but a man still did most of the work with his arms, because that is what hung on the pegboard, and that is what got the job done. Hand tools put the muscles under load for far longer. What trainers now call time under tension, and they demand real control and a steady grip the whole way through the cut or the turn. The very effort that modern power tools were invented to engineer out was quietly building the forearms and shoulders of the man who used them. They didn't see the effort as a downside. The effort was the whole point. Effort was the feature. Number 15. He washed the car by hand on Saturday. The Saturday car wash was practically a neighborhood ceremony. Every man out in his driveway over a bucket. Sudsy water, a sponge, the garden hose, then the chamois to dry it, then the paste wax rubbed on by hand and buffed back off, arm over arm until the chrome through the sun. Call it 45 minutes of bending into the wheel wells, reaching clear across the hood, and steady, two-armed scrubbing. All that reaching, squatting, and repetitive arm work is precisely the moderate, sustained effort that keeps the shoulders mobile and the heart ticking over. It is a large part of why your grandfather could still reach the top shelf and throw a ball at 75 without a second thought. He was not training the shoulders. He just would not be seen driving a dirty car. Number 14. He got the sun on his neck. Every day. Working and walking out of doors meant a 1950s man caught real, direct daylight on his skin every single day from spring clear through to fall. On the back of the neck, the forearms, the face. Not a stray 10 minutes dashing between a parked car and an office lobby, but hours of it as the ordinary background of an outdoor life. Sunlight on bare skin is how the body manufactures vitamin D, which is tied directly to bone density, to the way muscle contracts and holds its strength, and to the immune system. A man running low on it loses bone and strength faster, and the plain fact is that most men today, indoors and covered up, are running low on it. He didn't take a supplement. He just worked where the sun could find him. Number 13. His hobbies made him move. A man's free time was spent fishing the riverbank for an afternoon, walking the fields all morning behind a dog with a shotgun, bowling a few strings on Tuesday, dancing with his wife on a Saturday night to the radio or the local hall. Leisure meant going somewhere and doing something with the whole body, not sinking into a cushion to watch other men do it. Every one of those pastimes is incidental cardiovascular and balance work in disguise. Carrying tackle and decoys over uneven ground, standing for hours, the constant footwork of a dance floor, the rotation and the lunge of the bowling approach. Active hobbies keep the engine turning over long after the working years are behind a man. He didn't see fishing as exercise, but the river made him walk for it. Number 12. He sat on the floor and in hard chairs. There was no deep, overstuffed sofa engineered to swallow a man whole for 4 hours of an evening. Kitchen and dining chairs were straight-backed wood. The porch had a hard step and a plain rocker, and men thought nothing of sitting right down on the ground at the lake or the ball game and getting back up under their own power, over and over, all day long. Constantly lowering yourself to the floor and standing back up preserves the hips, the knees, and the core in a way that no soft, sinking cushion ever will. Because the cushion does the standing for you. The hard, upright seat that looks like plain discomfort to us was quietly keeping his joints young and his legs strong. He didn't own a recliner that did the getting up for him. No chair stood up for him. Number 11. He stayed lean without ever trying. Look at any photograph from a 1955 street corner or factory gate. The men are lean, and not because they dieted, fasted, or fretted over the scale. Between a day packed full of honest movement and meals served at fixed times, a man's weight simply held right where it belonged, year after year, without him giving it a single thought. This is several of those daily habits working together at once. Constant, real whole food and no grazing between meals add up to a body that quietly regulates its own weight. And carrying less weight in its turn protects every joint, the heart, and the back over the long haul. So the strength he built had a frame that lasted to use it. He didn't fight his weight. The shape of his day kept it for him. Number 10, he ate 3 meals and nothing between. Breakfast at the table before work, a packed dinner pail opened at noon, and supper at 6 when he came through the door. That was the whole of it. There was no all-day grazing, no snack drawer at the desk, no eating in the car or standing at the ice box at 10 at night, because food was prepared at fixed times and the kitchen was closed in between. This is, almost by accident, the very eating window that nutrition researchers study so closely today. Giving the body long, clean stretches with no food lets insulin settle all the way down and lets the metabolism rest. And that pattern is a large part of how a working man stayed lean, and even through decade after decade. He had never heard of an eating window. He just knew that you waited for supper. Number 9, he was early to bed and early to rise. With far less to keep a man up, no glowing screen, and only 3 television channels that signed off near midnight, the lights went out early, and the day started before 6 with the alarm clock and the work whistle. Sleep was long, dark, and regular, anchored to the rhythm of the sun and the shift rather than to a phone on the nightstand. Deep, regular sleep is when the body releases the bulk of its growth hormone and does the heavy work of repair and recovery. A man who got 7 or 8 solid hours on a fixed schedule rebuilt himself fully from every day of physical labor and showed up the next morning genuinely ready to do it all again, year after year. He did not track his sleep score. He just went to bed when it got dark. Strength is built while you rest. Number 8, he ate eggs, whole milk, and real meat. Breakfast was eggs and bacon in the cast iron pan. Milk came whole and cold in glass bottles, left on the step by the milkman, the cream still risen at the neck. Supper had real meat, liver and onions on a Thursday, a Sunday roast, pork chops, fish he had caught himself off the pier. Nobody trimmed away every gram of fat, and nobody was frightened of an egg yolk. That plate was rich in complete protein, the raw material the body builds and repairs muscle from. And holding on to muscle is the single biggest factor in whether a man stays strong, upright, and steady into old age. the thing the doctors now call fighting sarcopenia. You cannot do it on toast and coffee, and you cannot do it without enough protein, day in and day out. He did not count a macro in his life. He ate what built a working man, and it built one that lasted. Number 7. He slept in a cold bedroom. Central heating was modest, uneven, and expensive to run, so the bedrooms upstairs ran cold all winter. A man slept under a stack of wool blankets and a quilt in a room that might sit at 55 degrees by morning. And beyond the bed, he was out in the raw air constantly, working, walking, and standing at the bus stop with his collar turned up. Modern research into cold exposure shows the body burns extra energy simply to hold its temperature, switching on what scientists call brown fat and nudging the metabolism up a notch. Regular, mild cold is a small stress that the body adapts to and grows tougher and more resilient from, rather than the climate-controlled sameness most men live in now. He wasn't doing cold therapy. He just couldn't afford to heat the whole house. Number 6, he never truly retired. Even when the regular paycheck stopped, the man did not. He took on the repairs around the house, kept the garden, helped the neighbors raise a shed, sharpen the saws, fix the grandchildren's bicycles in the garage. There was simply no version of him that parked himself in a chair at 65 and waited out the clock. Purpose and daily usefulness are now strongly linked to a longer and sharper life. The thing researchers studying the world's longest-lived communities call having a reason to get up in the morning. The men who keep a job to do, something to lift, something to fix, hold on to both their bodies and their minds far longer than the men who stop cold. He didn't retire to rest. He stayed, useful, and usefulness kept him on his feet. Purpose keeps a man standing. Number 5. He got down on the floor with the kids. Fatherhood in that era still meant roughhousing on the living room rug, hoisting a child overhead and onto the shoulders, playing catch in the yard until dark, crawling around as the horse, and carrying a sleeping child up the stairs to bed. A man was down on the floor and back up onto his feet a dozen times in an evening without ever noticing he had done it. That endless lowering to the ground and rising back up is the most natural strength and mobility drill there is. In fact, the ability to get down to the floor and back up again without using your hands or knees for support is one of the strongest simple predictors researchers have found for how long and how well a man will live. He wasn't training the sit to stand. He was just down on the floor with his kids. Number 4. He belonged to something. The Masonic Lodge, the Union Hall, the parish, the Tuesday night bowling league, the Veterans of Foreign Wars Post, the Volunteer Fire Company. A man's week was stitched together with rooms full of other men he saw on a fixed schedule, season after season, year after year. He was known by name, he was counted on, and he had a standing reason to put on his coat and go be among people. This is not soft sentiment. It is hard data. A landmark 2010 review out of Brigham Young University, pooling nearly 150 separate studies, found that strong social connection improves the odds of survival by roughly 50%, an effect the authors put on par with quitting smoking and greater than the effect of obesity. Isolation is, measurably, a physical health risk. He didn't know loneliness could shorten a life. He just never let himself get lonely. Belonging kept him alive. Number 3, he took a walk after supper. The evening constitutional was a real and respected ritual, not a quaint idea. After the supper dishes were cleared, a man stepped out and walked the block, sometimes with his wife on his arm, sometimes alone with his pipe. 15 or 20 unhurried minutes in the last of the daylight before he settled in for the night. This one is almost too perfectly confirmed by the science. A 2022 review from the University of Limerick in Ireland found that even a short walk after eating, as little as 2 to 5 minutes, measurably blunts the blood sugar spike that follows a meal, because the working muscles in the legs pull glucose straight out of the bloodstream before it can do its damage. A regular 15-minute walk after dinner is one of the most powerful small habits a man can keep. He didn't know a thing about glycemic response. He just knew a walk after supper settled a man. 15 minutes. That's the whole secret. Number 2, he had a grip that never quit. Decades of hauling, twisting wrenches, gripping handsaws and shovel shafts, and shaking other men's hands, hard-built forearms like cable, and a grip like a vice. A 1950s man's handshake was a statement of who he was, and it stayed strong and sure long after his hair had gone white and his step had slowed. This may be the single most important item on the entire list. The 2015 study published in The Lancet, known as Pure, followed nearly 140,000 people across 17 countries, and found that every 5-kilogram drop in grip strength came with about a 16% rise in the risk of death from any cause, making the strength of a man's hands a better predictor of how long he will live than even his blood pressure. He never once tested his grip in a laboratory. He tested it on a rusted bolt and a full coal scuttle every day of his life. Strength in a handshake. Number 1, he built movement. Into the day itself, he never needed a gym. Here it is, the principle that sits underneath the other 24. The 1950s. Man never set aside one virtuous hour to be strong, and then surrendered the other 23 to a chair. Strength was not an appointment he kept or skipped. It was the medium he lived inside. From the walk to the streetcar, to the woodpile, to the ladder, to the garden, to the floor he wrestled on with his children at night. This is the real reason he aged the way he did. The modern approach asks a man to buy back, in 60 hard and joyless minutes, every bit of movement that the other 23 hours of his day have been carefully engineered to remove. The car, the elevator, the power tool, the delivery, the recliner. His day never removed it in the first place. That is the whole difference, and there is no membership on earth that can sell it back to you. They didn't even have a word for it. They just lived inside a body that was always working. It was never a workout. It was an architecture, So go back to where we started. We assume those men were strong because their lives were hard. But hardship was never the lesson. The lesson is that strength was built into the ordinary shape of a day. And somewhere along the way, we let that shape be taken apart. The walk replaced by the car. The woodpile by the thermostat. The floor by the recliner. The lodge by the screen. Then it was sold back to us in pieces. 1 hour and 1 membership at a time. You don't need to live in 1955 to get it back. You only need to put a little of the movement back into the day where it used to live. These aren't old habits. They're the right ones. It was never the exercise. It was the architecture. Try one of these this week. Take the easiest one if you want the lowest commitment, the after-supper walk. 15 minutes every evening. Take the middle road and carry your groceries in by hand, and take the stairs every single time the choice comes up. Or go deeper and pick one thing you've been paying someone else to do. The yard, a repair, the snow, and do it with your own 2 arms for a month. Then come down to the comments and tell me which one you tried and whether anything changed. How you slept, how you felt, how you moved. I want to know if the after-supper walk is doing for you what it did for them in 1955. Strength was never sold to those men. It was the way they lived. Go live a little more like that.